What's up, everyone? It is Tools from Tools 360 here. The NFL Draft is in the history books now for the 2020 season. We are going to run through every team by team here using ESPN.com. I felt ESPN had the best layout for this. We're just going to go through the draft picks, grade each team, and see if they filled their needs and that sort of deal. Some of the players I'll talk more about than others. Obviously, a lot of college players, you can't know them all, and I definitely don't know them all. Over the last couple of years, I haven't spent as much time watching college football, but there is some things to say about each team, and we know who the losers and winners of the draft were. Overall, as a whole, I don't think the draft was that super eventful. I think it was a decent draft. There was no really big surprises. Maybe one surprise was Fromm dropping all the way to where he did, which isn't really that big of a surprise. Not a lot of people were very high on him. My personal team, the Patriots, I wish they would have drafted him, but we'll get into more of that later when we talk about them. So the first team up we have is the Arizona Cardinals. Their main needs were offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, running back, receiver. Try to build around Kyler Murray a little bit, get him some weapons, which I think they did. They got at least, one late steal of a weapon here. So, first round pick with the 8th overall, they took Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson, outside linebacker. He was overall the 4th ranked player according to this, and the best player at linebacker easily in the draft. So, it's a pretty good pick there. He actually, I think, fell a little bit to what some people thought he was going to go. People thought he was going to go a little higher than that. But basically, I'm going to open up the rounds here, too, so I can see which teams picked in which order. So he picked 8th. Some people thought maybe something like the Giants or Dolphins could have possibly went for him as well. So they didn't have a second-round pick. 3rd round, they pick up Josh Jones from Houston, an offensive lineman, filling one of their top needs, as well as Josh fell a lot. Overall, 38th ranked. Player according to ESPN, and 7th for the position, offensive tackle. So I think it was some pretty good value here. It's hard to pass on him. He's probably the best available at the time on their board, but it also filled a need, so it's actually a really good pick. In the 4th round, 8th overall in the 4th, they picked Leki Fotu out of Utah, defensive tackle, filling another one of their major needs. Overall ranked 151. 11th at his position. Not the greatest pick there, but if it's a guy they thought they really needed, then they went out and got him. So it fills a need, and at the time, probably one of the better ones available. And then they traded down in the 4th round, trading a 5th round pick to get Rashad Lawrence out of LSU, another defensive tackle, who was actually ESPN had ranked higher than Leki Fotu. So they ended up with 2 good value picks there at the defensive tackle position. So overall, as a whole, getting those 2 players, one of them I'm sure will pan out of the 2, so that's kind of where you have to look with this sort of thing. And then no 5th round picks presumably traded to move up in the 4th. 6th round, they take Evan Weaver, an inside linebacker out of California. And overall, again, wasn't very highly ranked or anything. So, but yes, they got Evan Weaver, and should be a nice addition. Very rarely will he probably play, but when you get down to the 6th and 7th rounds, you'll find people who get cut or make it on the practice squad or as a backup. So it's good to have roster depth, though. So and then a good pick in the 7th round, Eno Benjamin, a running back out of Arizona State. Hi, kitty. He was 14th in the running back position, but a lot of people liked him and said he's a sleeper. I agree. I've seen him play a little bit. I think it's a good value pick for the 7th round, and anytime you can get a good position player that you can maybe get developed in the later rounds would be pretty good. So yeah, overall the Cardinals, decent draft. Simmons is a good pick. Josh Jones, good value. And then from there they get a little worse. So I'm going to give them probably like a B plus. It's a pretty good overall draft. They could have got probably another wide receiver to help out Kyler Murray, but they didn't. So, but they got some offensive players around him. Plus, they're building up on the defense pretty good. So, we'll see what can happen. And Benjamin can catch some passes out of the backfield. So, we'll see. Overall, about B for Arizona. Atlanta is up next. They pick 16th, and they probably had one of the not so greatest drafts. So first round, pick 16, they picked A.J. Terrell, the cornerback out of Clemson. He was drafted way too highly. ESPN had him ranked overall as a 51. It's still a good pick because it fits a need that they really wanted, and they had a couple of guys pegged at cornerback, including the biggest one I think was for them that they were really looking at was C.J. Henderson, who went to Jacksonville with the 9th pick. And so they said, well, our guy is gone, and they really kind of keyed in on him. So they took a reach with Terrell, but I think he was more of what they were looking for, so that's why they took him. Second round, 15th pick overall, they took Marlon Davidson, defensive tackle at Auburn. This was a pretty good pick, actually, for the second round. 5th-ranked defensive tackle, 52 rank overall. It's definitely not a bad pick, and it fills another need they were looking for. In the third round, they took Matt Hennessy, a center out of Temple. He was one of the, again, top 5 center in the draft, ranked 4 for that position. So it's a pretty average grade because they didn't really need any offensive line help. They needed a lot of defensive help. That's traditionally been the case lately in Atlanta. But they did go fairly defense heavy, at least 4 picks on defense. So 4th round, they take an inside linebacker, Mekhi Walker from Fresno State. Didn't really get a good grade for their pick. And I don't know much about him. I didn't watch any Fresno State football this year. California, Jalen Hawkins, a safety. For the 6th round, I mean, taking a safety is not bad. Obviously, they could have probably taken one in the 3rd round. That would probably win a little better if they were looking for that. But safety wasn't really one of their needs. They needed some linebackers, which they didn't really take any outside linebackers. Michaela Walker, I doubt he will ever get to start in the NFL. So I'm not sure what they were doing. Maybe they should have passed on the center here and took another defensive player. And then in the 7th round, they actually take a punter, Sterling Hofrechter from Syracuse. A little bit of a weird pick, but I guess if you need a punter, I would have personally just signed a cheap free agent punter if you need one. It can't be too hard to punt, right? So overall, their draft, I didn't really like it too much. I think Terrell is a bad pick for where he is at. They maybe could have got him in 2nd round, or they could have moved back. I probably would have traded down the pick at least 5-10 spots, something like that, and probably still got an AJ Terrell pretty easily. But again, that's on their fault for not getting value, and hopefully it turns out for them then. But compared to grades here, Atlanta probably gets like a C or a C minus for grade. I'll give them a C minus. Not the best draft. Next team up is Baltimore, who filled a lot of their needs and actually had a really good value draft if you're looking at it from where they selected people that fell to fit their needs. So Baltimore had a pretty good draft overall. In the first round, they took 28th. Obviously, picking 28, you got a tough. You're one of the best teams already. So if you have a good draft and you're in the back half of the draft, that's very good for your franchise going forward. And I think the Ravens are going to be a force to contend with here in the near future. Definitely probably get to the Super Bowl at least a couple times, I think, if they can keep Lamar Jackson healthy, because he's pretty dirty on the field lately. So first pick was Patrick Queen, LSU interior linebacker. So 21th ranked overall in the first, inside linebacker. So really good grade there, and it fills their top need. He can get around. He can play the middle. He can play zone. He can play the run. The Ravens defense traditionally has been good, but they did struggle a little bit last year. Second pick, they picked J.K. Dobbins, running back out of Ohio State. Second-ranked running back. To fall all the way to the end of the 2nd round is a very good pick. There's some other backs I like better, like the Edwards-Helaire, who also went ahead of him, and Swift, of course, went ahead of him. J.K. Dobbins, not a bad value, really good value for the end of the 2nd round. I know running backs haven't been as highly rated as they have been in the past, but 3rd round, they took Justin Matabuke from Texas A&M, one of the top 5 at the defensive tackle position, 40th ranked overall in the 3rd round. Crazy good value. Crazy good value for the Ravens. And they also had another 3rd round pick, Devin Duvernay, for the wide receiver from Texas. Not as highly ranked on the board, 13th receiver, but a lot of receivers went ahead of him. There's a very receiver-heavy draft class this year. And they got a familiar name who could be a good player. Seems like the Ravens always lack a good receiver, and maybe he can turn into something, but he's probably good enough to play a third or fourth receiver for them. And they also got another third-round pick, which is Malik Harrison, inside linebacker from Ohio State. Not the best value here as far as rankings go, but it's probably a guy they were targeting. You know, they already drafted Patrick Queen, and they got this guy as kind of insurance to back him up. And I'm sure at least Queen will see the field, and Malik Harrison could maybe see the field at one point. Tyree Phillips, also in the third round, a compensatory selection. So the Ravens had a lot of picks this year. Did a really good job in the third round, just nabbing value. Offensive tackle, again, as I say that, not good value here. Had him ranked 21 at his position. But at this point, if it's like your fourth selection in the third round and you're like sixth selection overall, it's okay to take a chance on someone you think might turn into something special or try to take an unknown player that you think is good. Fourth round, Ben Breedson from Michigan, offensive guard. Decent pick there. Broderick Washington Jr. in the fifth, defensive tackle from Texas Tech. James Prochet, wide receiver from SMU in the back end of the draft in the sixth round. Pretty good pick for the sixth round. He could turn into something as well. SMU is an underrated, sneaky team, and this is a familiar name we've heard in college ball this year. And Geno Stone, a safety with the last pick. So overall, the Ravens get probably like a A- draft. Very good draft, solid value. Took a couple flyers once they had the guys they wanted, so you can't blame a team for doing that, but a really good draft for Baltimore. Next up, we have Buffalo. I'm going to try to run through these a little faster here. We're already on 10 minutes. So they needed defensive line help, defense help, and offensive line help to protect Doc Allen and maybe a couple of position players. So they ended up taking A.J. Espinosa in the first round from Iowa, defensive end. Really good value pick here. Third ranked overall defensive end, 32 overall ranked. For the second round, like he fell. Like it's a really, really good pick. Good value pick. Zach Moss in the third round, also pretty good pick. The sixth ranked running back, 57th ranked overall. Just some good value, and it's a guy a lot of people are high on, and they need some running back help on the offense. And I think he'll see the field as a rookie, and I think Epinesa will also see the field as a rookie. Fourth round, they take wide receiver Gabriel Davis from UCF. Probably a reach here. They could have maybe gotten him later on. He's the 27th ranked receiver in the draft. Receivers were hard to come by in this draft, so really can't do any complaints about it taken. This is a pick here where that absolutely fell like crazy, and the Bills jumped on it. Jake Fromm, quarterback from Georgia, ranked as the fifth ranked overall quarterback, 54 overall rank. A good value in the middle to end of the fifth round. I wanted the Pats to take him in like this third round, you know. I really wanted New England to take Fromm. He seemed to fell, and they passed him on him 3 times, so we'll see. There's something obviously that they don't like about him, so either the Pats are going all in on Stidham or wait until next year's draft. But anyways, good value for Buffalo. He will be wise to sit behind Josh Allen, and Josh Allen, more of a risky player, could get hurt. In that case, maybe Buffalo makes Fromm into a capable backup. Sixth round, Tyler Bass from Georgia Southern, place kicker. The number 1 overall kicker, he fell. The Patriots took a different kicker from Marshall. Wanted to see Bass end up on the Pats too, but that didn't happen. But he stays in the division, so we'll see what happens. Sixth round, also Isaiah Hodgkins, wide receiver from Oregon State. Not a bad pick for the sixth round at all. Dane Jackson, cornerback in the seventh from Pittsburgh. Overall, pretty good draft for Buffalo, considering they also got Stephon Diggs with their number 1 pick, essentially. So the Bills, also similar to Baltimore, get a... You can't really factor Diggs in, though. I mean, you kind of do, but you kind of don't. So they get, I think, a B+ as well. Could have maybe gone some other directions, but they got some good players I think are going to help them out. Next up is the Carolina Panthers, who weirdly took all defensive players, but they had a big need for defense, and all their needs here are defensive, and they went defensive players at every position. So I actually give them props for doing that. First pick was Derek Brown, defensive tackle out of Auburn. Third overall ranked player, they got it to 7th, so pretty good value there for them. He's going to probably start right away and fill a need on their defensive line. Second round, Yutar Gross-Matos from Penn State, defensive end. So going defensive line again, building their line with some prospect. This was also a good pick because he is ranked 33rd overall, so he could have gone in the first round potentially. So to get him in the second round, pretty good value. Jeremy Chin, a safety from Southern Illinois, on a trade. Fourth overall safety in the draft, top 50 player that they got at the end of the the end of the second round. So another pretty good value defensive pick there. Troy Pride Jr., cornerback from Notre Dame, position ranked 13th, overall ranked 103 in the fourth round. Pretty good solid pick there. No really complaints in the fourth. Fifth round, Kenny Robinson, West Virginia, another safety, lower ranked player obviously, but if it's something they key on, they already took Jeremy Chin, so why not if there's a player you like? Defensive tackle Bravion Roy in the sixth, and Stanley Thomas Oliver the third, cornerback in the seventh. So all defensive, all good for Carolina though, trying to build a defense and play a ground and pound game with Christian McCaffrey and Teddy Bridgewater, so team will be okay. Some of these players are going to see the field right away because they really need defense. But overall, their draft grade could have done something a little different, but they get probably a solid B for the Panthers. Chicago had an interesting draft. They didn't have a first round pick. They traded for Khalil Mack and gave up their first rounder to Oakland for that. So their first pick came in the second round. They took tight end Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame. Probably the best ranked tight end who they got in the second, so decent value pick there. And they have a shit ton of tight ends on their roster, but they did need to get a good one because they have 9 tight ends on the roster for a reason because they all kind of stink. So hopefully Cole Kmet could get in there and he could be a day one starter. Jalen Johnson, cornerback from Utah, 5th ranked overall for the position, 44 ranked in the middle of the second round. Pretty good. Decent pick there. They didn't really need any defensive back help, but they were taking some players. Trevars Gibson, outside linebacker from Tulsa, not even ranked, so you have to kind of give that a bad grade there. Kindle Vildor, Georgia Southern, cornerback. Again, probably didn't need to go cornerback there. Probably should have focused more on getting some O-line help. But they ended up taking Darnell Mooney in the 5th round from Tulane, a wide receiver, and just a speedy guy. Arlington Hambright in the 7th, an offensive tackle. So finally they had to take a tackle late. And then Latavius Simmons, offensive guard, in the 7th as well. Their draft was a little interesting. Khalil Mack, you have to factor in a little bit. Cole Kmet's going to be a good pick. And I would have taken some offensive line help earlier and focused less on the defense if I was them. Their defense seems pretty solid already, but I would give Chicago probably for the actual draft would be a C+, but since they got Khalil Mack, I think that bumps it up to at least a B-. So B- for Chicago. So now we got on to Cincinnati. Obviously picked 1 overall with Joe Burrow. Easy pick there. A lot of people had him ranked 2nd behind the guy from Ohio State. I can't think of his name now. Chase Young, sorry. But Joe Burrow is going to be their future quarterback definitely for the next 10 years to come, or however long he wants to stay in Cincinnati for. I think he's a really good player. Wasn't as high as him going into last year's college season, but after watching him play with LSU, he has all the tools. He's fast. He can throw deep. He's accurate. So he should hopefully be a really quarterback for him. And they have a lot of offensive weapons around them as well. So second round, they ended up taking T. Higgins to go with him. Now they have T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and A.J. Green all around him. Going to be a scary team, I think, offensively, especially when they have good running backs like Joe Mixon and who's the other running back? Giovanni Bernard as well. Wow, it's been a long day. Mind is starting to go blank here. So T. Higgins, 6th ranked overall receiver in the beginning of the second. Probably not the best pick, but he was ranked overall 30, so I guess it's within value. They're trying to get some insurance behind A.J. Green since A.J. Green's pretty old. Logan Wilson, interior linebacker in the 3rd from Wyoming. Akeem Davis Gaither in the 4th from Appalachian State, outside linebacker. Khalid Kareem, Notre Dame, defensive end. Hakeem Adeniji, Kansas, offensive tackle. That's a pretty good pick for the 6th round. He is going to be a decent player at tackle, I think. And Marcus Bailey from Purdue, interior linebacker, also a decent pick in the 7th round. So they got some good late round value. They got some offensive weapons in the top of the draft. They filled all their needs. So overall, they get an A for the draft. The Bengals, of course, can't go wrong. Hopefully Joe Burrow has a nice career and pans out for them and can bring some quality play back to Cincinnati. Next up is the Browns. They had needs at offensive tackle, wide receiver, cornerback, inside linebacker, offensive guard. So offensive line, defense help, and receiver help. The first round, they took Jedrick Wills Jr., offensive tackle from Alabama. Can't go wrong with that. They're trying to get insurance and protection for Baker Mayfield. Second round, they took Grant Delpit from the Colts in safety from LSU. Third overall safety. They needed some defensive back help, and they got some help there with Grant Delpit. He should be a good player. Obviously, NFL ready since he played in the SEC and with LSU. Third round, they took Jordan Elliott out of Missouri, defensive tackle. 5th ranked defensive tackle, and the third ain't that bad of value. 41 ranked overall, so it's actually a really good value pick. Third round, they also took Jacob Phillips from LSU, an interior linebacker. Not the highest grade overall, but again, LSU, SEC, NFL-ready players that they produce. Same with Bama. Harrison Bryant, the tight end, in the 4th round. Pretty good pick. This was someone who I thought the Patriots might try to go after, but he ends up falling a bit and goes to Cleveland. Pretty good help for them, and they did just sign Austin Hooper as well, so they're going to have some weapons for Baker and just some solid players who can catch the ball. 5th round, they had Nick Harris, the center from Washington. Some more offensive line helped. 6th-ranked center in this 5th round is not too bad. And in the 6th round, Donovan Peoples-Jones, a receiver from Michigan. Pretty good late receiver value pick, I think, in the 6th round, especially considering how many receivers went ahead of him here. So overall, the Browns had a really good draft, I think. They're building a nice little team. I'm going to give them an A-. Next up, the Dallas Cowboys, of course, in the 1st round. Took the flashy pick with CeeDee Lamb. He was ranked 10th overall and kind of fell to them, the 2nd best receiver. How many receivers went before Lamb? So I know Ruggs went to Oakland. Judy, of course, went. And Lamb was the 3rd. So they took Lamb there to block the Eagles, who they knew were going receiver. So the Eagles ended up with Ruger. But CeeDee Lamb is going to be a stud, I think. He's going to be there with Dak and Amari Cooper, so it's going to be a good offense there in Dallas, and he will get some play time. They needed a receiver desperately. 2nd round, they took Trayvon Diggs. As a note, the Cowboys are my 2nd favorite team behind the Patriots, just so you guys know. 2nd pick overall, Trayvon Diggs, Alabama cornerback. Pretty good pick there. Good value for the middle of the 2nd round, since he was 39th ranked overall and the 3rd best corner in the draft. This is someone who Atlanta could easily took in the 1st round or traded down for instead of Terrell. So really good value pick for Dallas there. 3rd round, they took Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle, filling a need out of Oklahoma. 6th round, hometown, pretty good 49th overall rank they got in the 3rd. These are really good value picks for the Cowboys. 4th round, Reggie Robinson, the 2nd from Tulsa, corner. 4th round, Tyler Bidas, Wisconsin center as well, filling a need there. Their offensive lines get a little older, so they're trying to get some more people coming up mode. 3rd ranked overall center in the 4th, pretty good. Bradley Anae, Utah defensive end, and Ben DiNucci, quarterback from James Madison in the 7th round. Maybe he could take over in the future for Dak if Dak wants to take some money somewhere, but I doubt it. Dallas overall gets an A grade. Really good draft for them. Defensive help is what they needed. They needed a receiver. They got that all in the first half of the draft, and the extra picks are just, frosting on top of the cake. Next up is Denver, who also had a really good draft, filling lots of their needs. 1st round, 15th overall, Jerry Jeudy out of Alabama. The best receiver in the draft falls a bit to them after Oakland passes on him. So they're thinking, Las Vegas. They're thanking Las Vegas for that pick. 2nd round, they take KJ Hamler, Penn State wide receiver. Maybe a little bit of a reach there, but receivers were going hot and heavy, and they really needed good receivers, and they got a couple. Third round, Michael Ajimunua from Iowa, cornerback. It's an okay pick in the third. Lloyd Cushenberry, the third, at center in the third is a really good pick. He might actually start for them. And so I give that pick a good grade. Also in the third, McTelvin Agim, defensive tackle from Arkansas. I don't know much about him. Fourth round, Albert Akwinigbunam, tight end from Missouri. Sixth ranked tight end in the draft. More offensive weapons. He's an okay player. Nothing crazy good there, though. Fifth round, Justin Sternad, Wake Forest, outside linebacker. Sixth round, Nutani Mute, offensive guard, Fresno State. Decent pick in the sixth. Tyree Cleveland in the seventh, Florida wide receiver. This is just a reach at this point. Probably wouldn't have taken another receiver considering they took 2 in the first round. Maybe they go offensive line or defense there instead. And Derek Tutska, offensive or outside linebacker. Overall, the draft could have been a little better. It's on the top. First 3 rounds are very good. After that, it kind of tails off a bit. So I'm going to give Denver an A-. Judy, Hamler, Cushenberry are all going to be starters for them on the offense, I think. We'll see what happens, but pretty good draft for the Broncos. So overall, next is Detroit, taking Jeff Okudah, third overall. Probably one of the best players in the draft overall, NFL-ready players. He's going to start right away. He's going to replace Darius Slay, who they got rid of. So Okudah, good pick there. A lot of people thought the Lions might trade down, but I'm glad on them for just sticking with their guns and filling a defensive need. Of course, Matt Patricia, defensive coach, was the coordinator here in New England for a while. Second round, they get a good running back, although they didn't really need a running back, but since he was the ranked overall number 1 running back, he kind of fell to them a little bit, so I don't blame them for taking DeAndre Swift. Detroit's never had good running backs. They just have a bunch of average players generally, so maybe he can stand above the pack and make something happen there in Detroit. Third round, Julian Okwara, Notre Dame outside linebacker. Decent pick there. Jonah Jackson in the third as well, Ohio State offensive guard. Decent pick, third-ranked guard. You can't really complain in the third round. Logan Stenberg, also a guard, who is a pretty good pick in the fourth. So they definitely shoring up the offensive line, definitely helping out the defense. Quintez Cephas, wide receiver from Wisconsin. Again, receiver-heavy class. Fifth round, probably a little bit of a reach for him, but it's not horrible. Fifth round, also Jason Huntley from New Mexico State, a running back. See, I would not have taken the second running back because if you're taking DeAndre Swift in the second, there wasn't really a need there, so you got to give them a down notch for that. Sixth round, John Penisini from Utah. Defensive tackle. At this point, decent, but not one of the better players in the draft. Jason Cornell, defensive end. So I like the picks in the round 1, 2, 3. Fourth round picks are pretty good too. From there, it just kind of goes dramatically downhill. So I think I give the Lions a B+. Next up is the Packers, who some consider to widely have the worst draft. Really needed a need at wide receiver, and they did not take one. They did not build anything around Aaron Rodgers. And they instead, in the first round, they took Jordan Love, who is going to be Rodgers' backup and probably the future starter for them in the next 2 to 3 years. I didn't really love overall in the draft. I liked probably Fromm and Eason better than him. But it's not a terrible pick. They're building for the future. You don't blame a team for that. Rodgers is up there anyways with age-wise. Who cares if it pisses him off? You really have to build a team, and that's what Matt LaFleur wants to do, is build a team. Second round, A.J. Dillon, running back from Boston College. Definitely a little bit of a reach there, I think, but it's still an okay pick. Joshua DeGara, Cincinnati tight end. Pretty big a reach, kind of a flyer pick. Really bad choice considering there's still all these receivers sitting out there that they didn't take. Fifth round, Camille Martin, Minnesota inside linebacker. Sixth round, John Runyon, offensive guard from Michigan. Not a bad pick. Jake Hansen also in the sixth round, a center. So they're going line heavy, like they're protecting Rodgers. They were protecting Love. Seaman Stepniak, 25th overall offensive tackle in the sixth. Some more protection for future quarterback Jordan Love. Vernon Scott, safety from TCU. And Jonathan Garvin, defensive end from Miami. In the last round is a pretty good value pick there. I like that pick. Really horrible draft considering they didn't get a receiver and they got a really bad kind of not a bad tight end, but someone who's more of a sleeper pick. So overall, the Packers get a Jordan Love ain't a bad pick. Like, you can't really fault him for that, but they get probably a C- in the draft, if not a D+. Next up, we got the Houston Texans, who had also one of the not as good drafts. They filled a couple needs in defense, and they didn't get any kind of good offensive people. They traded their first-round pick, of course, for Larry Tunsil from Miami. In second round, they take Ross Blacklock, who was probably one of their better picks here, really good value for the second round, since he was 25th overall, third at the position. Jonathan Greenard, a Florida outside linebacker, 15th position ranked, 122nd overall. Charlie Heck, North Carolina offensive tackle, pretty good pick there in the fourth. It's actually not bad. John Reed, defensive back help in the fourth as well. And Isaiah Coulter, a wide receiver from Rhode Island. Probably a bit of a reach there on him. They didn't have many picks in this draft, so it's kind of hard to grade them, but they're just pretty average all around other than the Blaylock pick. So I think they get a C+ from Houston. Next up is Indianapolis. They're in the same division as Houston. They got some offensive weapons to go with Rivers, and they also got a future quarterback to take over probably for Rivers, who I think can do that. I think Brissett is good. I don't know why they didn't stick with him and they decided to go with Rivers instead. But second round, they didn't have a first-round pick. Second round, they took Michael Pittman Jr. from USC. And seventh overall receiver in the second round. Pretty good. I mean, they traded up to get him. So I think he can be an okay player for them. They definitely need some offensive weapons. Jonathan Taylor, running back from Wisconsin. Also, decent pick. They didn't need a running back per se, but it seems like Indianapolis is always one of those teams like Detroit who kind of always needs a running back. So, fourth overall running back in the second. It's not a bad choice at that point. Julian Blackmon in the third, a safety from Utah. Decent pick there. Jacob Eason in the fourth. Pretty good pick there. Maybe Fromm is better, but I liked Eason better than Fromm. So I would have maybe liked to see Easton fall to New England as well, but Indy comes up, takes him, so I think he could potentially be a future starter for them after Rivers. Danny Pintner, Ball State offensive guard. Robert Windsor in the sixth, Penn State defensive tackle. And Isaiah Rogers from UMass, hometown college there in the sixth. And in the sixth as well, Desmond Patman, wide receiver from Washington State. Not a bad pick in the sixth at all. Jordan Glasgow from Michigan in the sixth as well. Their draft is okay. Nothing outstanding. It seems just slightly above average. They filled some needs, which is good. So they probably get about a B- for the Colts. Next up is the Jaguars. I'm just going to take a sip of water here real quick. Jacksonville is up next. They picked the 9th overall, took C.J. Henderson, probably the best defensive back in the draft from Florida. And they took Clavion Chason as well in the first, trading up from the Rams. They got it from the Rams for another trade. I don't remember which trade it was. Drawing a blank. But anyways, Clavion Chason, decent pick there, like really good value. So they get one of the best exterior linebackers and one of the best defensive backs. They're really trying to build up that defense again, and those defense was definitely a need for them, as well as some offensive weapons. In the second round, they take Laviska Shenault Jr. from Colorado, who I was hoping would go to New England. He's a Tyreek Hill type player who was a really good value, I think, in the second based on all the receivers that went off the board. I thought the Pats could have maybe taken them in this early second, late first. But they passed on him, and he ended up going to Jacksonville. Third round, Jacksonville always needs receivers as well. Third round, Davon Hamilton, defensive tackle from Ohio State, decent pick. Fourth round, Ben Barch, offensive tackle from St. John's, Minnesota, just another decent pick. Hosea Scott in the fourth round, Michigan State corner, decent pick. Shaquille Quarterman, Miami, interior linebacker, okay picks. Daniel Thomas, safety. Colin Johnson, wide receiver. In the fifth round, it was 17th ranked all from Texas. Pretty good value pick there in the fifth. Not bad. So, again, a little weird that they already took receiver in Shenault, but two receivers ain't gonna hurt anything. Shenault is more of a punt returner, running back, jet sweep type of guy. Jake Luton, Oregon State quarterback. Pretty bit surprise here, but I mean, Jacksonville has never really had great quarterbacks, so take a guy and maybe he'll pan out to Sutton. It'll probably just be a practice squad type player. Taylor Davis, Georgia Tech tight end in the 6th. And Chris Claybrooks in the 7th, Memphis corner. Overall, their draft was pretty good on the top end. Really good defensive players, really good receiver who I like a lot. So I think Jacksonville gets a A- in their draft. I think they did a really good job. Next up is the Chiefs. First round, of course, they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the 3rd-ranked running back, who at that point 28th overall, so it still wasn't bad, but they had their choice of running backs, and this is the guy who they went with. Obviously someone who they targeted. They do need running back help, someone who can catch the ball out of the backfield, which is just what Mahomes needs. 2nd round, they took Willie Gay Jr. out of Mississippi State, inside linebacker. A little bit of a reach there. 3rd round, Lucas Niang, TCU, offensive tackle. Pretty good pick there. Will be a decent player, possibly a starter. 4th round, L'Jarius Sneed, Louisiana Tech safety. Little bit of a reach there as well. Mike Dana, Michigan, defensive end. Just decent player. Thakarius Keys, Tulane corner. I like their first pick is okay. It could have been even better. Like, you maybe take Swift or someone, but if it's a guy they target, it's a guy they target. Niang is a really good pick in the 3rd. Other than that, it's not too crazy. So I give the Chiefs probably like a B- draft. Nothing too crazy, but again, they already have a really good established team, and they picked last in the draft. Of course, defending Super Bowl champs. LA Chargers up next. They picked a quarterback in the 1st round. Obviously, they need a quarterback. Now they don't have Rivers. Justin Herbert, it's a possibility he could start right out of the gate from them. I don't know too much about him, to be honest. I didn't follow him as much as some of the other QBs. It seems like he might have been the best available after Tua and Burrow, but we'll see about that. It's more of an NFL-ready type guy, I think, when it comes to Herbert. 1st round, they got another pick in Kenneth Murray, inside linebacker from Oklahoma, so New England traded with them. Decent pick. I mean, it's the player they wanted, the player they got. So, 4th round, Joshua Kelly at a UCLA running back to go with Justin Herbert. He was kind of a little bit of a reach in the 4th. Maybe you get him in the 5th. Took a receiver in the 5th instead, Joe Reed. Decent value there. Not bad at all. 6th round, Ahola Gilman from Notre Dame, safety. For a 6th round, I think that's a really good pick. Notre Dame is my college team, of course, and he's a pretty good defensive player. KJ Hill, receiver from Ohio State in the 7th round, so more receiver value. Overall, this draft is obviously very dependent on how Herbert turns out, but I think it's a good draft for what they needed and the team they're trying to build there in LA, so I'm going to give them a B+. Next up is the Rams, who didn't have a 1st-round pick. 2nd round, they take running back Cam Akers, who is probably a little bit of a reach at that spot. But again, you're in the end of the 2nd round. Some of the other major backs were taken before him. They don't really need a running back, per se, based on who they drafted the last couple of years, and Brown and Henderson. So it's an okay pick. It's probably best on their board type pick. 2nd round, however, they get Van Jefferson, receiver out of Florida, 18th ranked overall receiver, who I think is probably a better player than that. So I think it's a good value pick there in the 2nd for them, and it's a type of receiver that's going to fit well in their system and their scheme. Terrell Lewis in the 3rd, outside linebacker from Bama, 75th overall. Terrell Burgess, 3rd round as well, Utah safety, 7th ranked safety, pretty good value pick at the end of the 3rd. 4th round, Bryce Hopkins, Purdue, tight end. Not the best tight end in the draft, or maybe some other ones are still left there for them, but if it's a guy they wanted, I think it's an okay pick. Jordan Fuller in the 6th, Ohio State safety. Clay Johnson in the 7th, Baylor interior linebacker. They took a kicker, Sam Sloman in the 7th as well from Miami, Ohio. Tremaine Artrum, Clemson offensive guard. They filled a lot of their needs and did the best that they could without having a 1st-round pick. Cam Akers was a little bit of a weird pick, but Van Jefferson, I think, made up for that. But overall, it's just a solid draft, so you give them like a C+, B- type range for the Rams. Las Vegas, of course, Henry Ruggs III, and Bama, they wanted a speedster. They should have probably took, Jerry Jeudy here instead, but they got the guy they wanted. 1st round, DeMonte Arnett as well, Ohio State corner. Maybe a little high for him, kind of a reach. But those are two needs they had. Third round, Lynn Bowden Jr., receiver out of Kentucky. They're getting Carr some weapons. And Brian Edwards, I think, was a really good pick in the third round as well. Obviously, they traded up to get him. They're like, oh, these two receivers are on the board. Let's just take both. Maybe one of them will turn out. But I like Brian Edwards a lot out of South Carolina. He can be a good threat. These are all receivers that complement each other well. And I think they're going to have a little bit of a learning curve, obviously, with Derek Carr. But in the next couple of years, some of these players could turn out. Third round, also Tanner Muse, Clemson safety. Good pick for the third round, I think. It's not a bad value pick at safety. Fourth round, John Simpson, Clemson offensive guard. And fourth round as well, Meek Robertson, corner from La Tech. Pretty good corner, still sitting there in the fourth round. So overall, their draft could have been better if they take Jerry Jeudy. I think they have a better draft, but they really wanted the speedster. So overall, I give the Raiders a B. They're just a solid draft. Maybe a B-. Miami Dolphins. First pick, Tua Tagovailoa. I don't like the pick. A lot of people do like it. Obviously, he's probably the best quarterback at one point until Joe Burrow came around. But very injury prone. He's not going to play for a while. He's going to sit behind Fitzpatrick. We'll see how that pans out. But again, they could have went other ways. But I think they needed a future quarterback, and hopefully he can stay healthy. First round, they also took Austin Jackson, USC offensive tackle. They basically are building a foundation around Tua with their next couple picks. It's a little bit of a reach there, but it's still an okay pick. And Noah Ibenagbe from Auburn, corner. Good defensive player. Again, probably a little bit of a reach there, but it's still a good pick. Robert Hunt in the second, Louisiana offensive guard. Pretty good pick there, building more around Tua. Second round, also Raquan Davis, defensive tackle, Bama. Also a really, really good pick. Third round, Brandon Jones out of Texas, a safety. It's an okay value pick. Fourth round, Solomon Kinley, Georgia. Again, decent, okay pick. Fifth round, Jason Stowbridge, North Carolina, defensive end. Good pick there. Curtis Weaver in the fifth, Boise State, defensive end. These are all just solid picks, but nothing too crazy, Blake Ferguson, LSU. Malcolm Perry, wide receiver. So obviously in this draft, we look back in a couple of years and see how Tua is doing to really give it a grade. But I think they got a lot of their needs, especially on defense, offensive line, and at quarterback. So if things pan out well for them, it's a very good draft. So they get probably a A- for Miami. I'm not the biggest Tua fan, but we'll see how he turns out. Minnesota up next. First round, receiver Justin Jefferson to replace Stephon Diggs. Really awesome. Great pick for them. First round as well, Jeff Gladney from TCU, a corner. Good defensive pick for them. Right off the bat, they fill their two highest needs. Second round, Ezra Cleveland, Boise State offensive tackle, filling more needs, and fifth-ranked offensive tackle in the late second. I think he fell a bit, like a really great value pick. Third round, Cameron Dantzler, corner at a Mississippi State, another good value pick in the end of the third round. Fourth round, DJ Wanham, South Carolina defensive end. It's an okay pick. Fourth round, James Lynch, Baylor defensive tackle. Decent value pick for the fourth. Troy Dye, inside linebacker in the fourth as well. Decent value. They had a lot of picks. Holy crap. Fifth round, Harrison Hand, Temple, corner. Not the best pick. KJ Osborne in the fifth round, receiver out of Miami. Probably reached there. There's probably many other receivers available, but they already took their guy in Justin, so we'll see. Blake Brandel in the sixth, Oregon State offensive tackle. At this point, they've had so many picks here, you just take people, right? Like whoever's left. Josh Miletus, a safety in the sixth round, like decent value pick. Kenny Willekes, defensive end in the seventh, good value pick, like the 14th ranked defensive end in the seventh round. Like, come on. Nate Stanley, a quarterback from Iowa. Probably not going to make anything of that, but hey, it's a player. I mean, at this point, this is like their 80th draft pick, so like you just take people. Brian Cole, safety in the seventh, and Kyle Hinton, offensive guard, in the seventh. I mean, considering they lost Stephon Diggs, the draft is pretty good to replace him and their needs. So overall, the Vikings, I think, have a really good draft with a lot of good value, so they get an A-. Next up is the Patriots, who I will probably maybe do a separate video on their draft, but this is my team, and as my perspective as a fan, I was disappointed in their draft. However, but it's a typical Bill Belichick draft. No flashy players, just players who are going to try to build a solid foundation around. And I really would have liked for them to take Fromm, who they passed on like 3 times, and Eason, who they passed on twice. But they end up with no quarterbacks, and they signed a couple of restricted free agents. So they're kind of going all in at Stidham, or they're waiting for a future draft class. So Kyle Duggar in the second round is a pick that a lot of people like. He's out of Lenore Ryan, which is a Division II school. First Division II player ever drafted, I believe. But people are saying he's just a ball hawk, really good safety. For second round, maybe a little bit of a reach, but he's a player that I know they targeted, so they got him, so that's good. Second round, also, Josh Uche is like a typical Bill Belichick player on defense. Can move around positions, can play the edge, can play the interior, I think. Pretty good pick, in my opinion. I like that pick a lot. It's a name I think we'll be hearing, and he'll get some playtime, I think, in New England. Third round, Anafree Jennings, outside linebacker from Alabama. Pretty good edge guy here, too, especially at the end of the third. It's a decent value pick. And linebacker's position, I think the Patriots really needed, although their needs on ESPN say quarterback and tight end are the most important. Agree with the tight end, don't agree with the quarterback necessarily. But I do agree they don't have linebacker on here, which is a little surprising. And they also need O-line help, which they did get some. Third round, they take Devin Asiasi, tight end at UCLA. Not a horrible pick. There were some other guys available that they could have taken earlier, like Cole Kmet. But Asiasi, for what was left at tight end there, is a pretty good pick. Then they move up and take Dalton Keene out of Virginia Tech, also a tight end, which is a very weird pick considering they just took Asiasi. But it's just a guy who can kind of line up all over the field, which is, I think, why Belichick kind of liked him here. Probably could have waited a couple rounds and got him. Same with Justin Rossweiler. This is when I started getting disappointed in the draft because they take a kicker in the 5th round who wasn't even ranked and who wasn't the better kickers. He's very consistent, but we'll see what happens with him. 6th round, they took Michael Onwenu, Michigan offensive guard. I think it's an okay pick in the 6th. Justin Herron, Wake Forest offensive tackle. Probably not the best tackle there, but 6th round, again, it's okay. Kashe Malua, Wyoming inside linebacker, who I don't know much about, and Dustin Woodward, center from Memphis. So they filled some of their needs. They didn't fill a big need at, I think, wide receiver, which such a receiver-heavy class, I would have taken one. Tight end was a good fill, but they probably could have made a little bit better picks, but I don't really hate these picks. And I don't hate these picks at all. I think these are very solid Bill Belichick picks. I just would have liked there to be a quarterback somewhere in there. But overall, I'm going to give my Pats probably a draft grade of probably a B-. I would have liked for them to take Fromm, who they passed on a couple times. Next up is the Saints. Cesar Ruiz, best available player for them. They took in the 1st. Didn't really fill a need, but they're trying to keep Breeze alive for one more year, basically, as he tries to wrap out his career there. Outside linebackers, Zach Baum in the 3rd. And 3rd, Adam Trotman, really good pick in the 3rd. Someone who I would have liked to see New England possibly get, either him or Cole Kmet. And then big receiving target. And then Tommy Stevens in the 7th, quarterback from Mississippi State. They didn't really have any picks, so they're kind of all in on what they got for this year, and they have one of the best teams in the NFL, so it's no surprise. Cesar Ruiz probably will end up starting for them from day one. So Saints get probably, based on the picks, they only had 4. I mean, they get like a C. New York Giants, let's see, all right. Giants had the 4th overall pick. They took Andrew Thomas, which was kind of a reach for tackle, but it's someone they wanted to get, and he probably wouldn't have survived the next few picks because tackles were a big need for a lot of teams. But you can't go a little bit of a reach, but it's still an okay pick, in my opinion. One of the better tackles out there with a lot of potential. 2nd round, they took Xavier McKinney from Alabama. Awesome picks, considering he really fell to them. He's the type of guy they're looking for on defense. Really, really good pick. Matt Pert in the 3rd, offensive tackle from UConn. It's an okay pick for what's left for tackle there, so really can't complain about that. 4th round, Darnay Holmes, cornerback from UCLA. Pretty good pick. Again, so they're going offensive line, defensive backfield. Like, that's what their needs were. Shane Lemieux, offensive guard in the 5th, is actually a pretty good pick too, and I think he's going to get play time. Cam Brown in the 6th, outside linebacker. decent pick, again in the 6th. Carter Coughlin in the 7th. Outside linebacker, Minnesota. T.J. Brunson in the 7th as well. Interior linebacker from South Carolina. Chris Williamson, Minnesota, corner in the 7th. And Tay Crowder, Georgia, inside linebacker in the 7th. Pretty good draft for the Giants, and I give them probably like a B+. The only thing is hopefully Thomas can pan out for them. McKinney, Pert, Thomas, really good picks in the front end. New York Jets up next. They also had a pretty decent draft. Mekhi Beckham, tackle in the 1st round, who probably could have went higher than that, so they had a really good value pick there. Denzel Mims in the 2nd from Baylor, wide receiver. Decent receiver. That's what they needed to fill. They need some offensive help around Darnold. 3rd round, Ashton Davis, California, safety. Pretty good pick there, too. Jabri Zuniga in the 3rd, Florida defensive end. Again, another solid pick. LaMichael Perine, running back from Florida. I like Perine for the 4th round. I think that's a good pick. They don't really need a running back, but again, more offensive weapons for Darnold to mess around with. 4th round, James Morgan, Florida International quarterback. In the 4th round, I mean, it's a decent value pick. It's not a crazy good pick considering you already have Darnold, but Darnold is also known to get injured, so maybe a little insurance there for them. Maybe they just needed a backup. Cameron Clark in the 4th, offensive tackle from Charlotte. Bryce Hall in the 5th, corner from Virginia. Pretty good pick in the 5th round. Brandon Mann, punter from Texas A&M. I don't believe in drafting a punter. You just sign them after the draft. But overall, good draft for the Jets as well. They get probably a B+. Next up is the Eagles. I'm going to try to roll through these last couple teams because we're around 50 minutes here. Jalen Reagor in the 1st round. They got probably super bummed out that the Cowboys took CeeDee Lamb. Reagor was kind of a reach there, but it's still an okay pick. 2nd round, Jalen Hurns, kind of a weird pick, I think. They're trying to compliment Wentz and maybe get a little insurance for him since he's very injury prone, but we'll see how that pans out. 3rd round, Davian Taylor, Colorado outside linebacker. Not a good pick there. Kayvon Wallace in the 4th. Nothing special there. Jake Driscoll in the 4th, offensive guard. Decent value at the end of the 4th. John Hightower in the 5th, wide receiver, Boise State. Probably not a good receiver pick there either. Maybe a little bit of a reach, but could be a good player. Sean Bradley, interior linebacker. In the 6th was a pretty good pick considering he was a 7th-ranked interior linebacker. 6th, Quez Watkins, wide receiver, Southern Miss. 6th, Priest Tico Wanogo, Auburn, offensive tackle. And in the 7th, Casey Toohill, Stanford, defensive end. So overall, they filled a couple needs, but receiver picks could have gone a lot better for them. So overall, I think they're one of the weaker draft classes here, so they get a C for the Eagles. Pittsburgh is up next. No 1st-round pick, but they have Mika Fitzpatrick from that, so pretty good there. Chase Claypool in the 2nd round, Notre Dame receiver, who I like a lot. Notre Dame is my team, as I mentioned. Based on all the receivers that are going, this is maybe he could have gone towards the end of the 2nd round, but I think it's a good pick, and they definitely needed another weapon for Big Ben as he winds down his career. 3rd round pick, Alex Highsmith, outside linebacker from Charlotte. I don't know why I keep doing that. 4th round, Anthony McFarland Jr., Maryland running back. Actually a pretty decent running back for the 4th. Kevin Dotson, 4th round, offensive guard. Antoine Brooks Jr., safety from Maryland as well in the 6th. And Carlos Davis, Nebraska defensive tackle. None of these picks are special. Claypool's okay. Highsmith is okay. McFarland's okay. Everything is just okay. So Pittsburgh as well as Philadelphia also gets a C. On to Seattle next. 1st round took Jordan Brooks, outside linebacker from Texas Tech. Probably went a little high there considering ESPN ranked 92 overall, so it's a little bit of a reach for them, but it's a need they had, and if it's the type of Seattle player that Pete Carroll likes, they're going to take him. 2nd round, they've always had traditionally good drafts, but kind of average drafts, just good enough. 2nd round, Darrell Taylor, defensive end from Tennessee. It's an okay pick there. Again, just decent value for a need they had at the position. Damian Lewis, offensive guard. They needed some guard play, and they got the 2nd-ranked guard in the 3rd round, and they traded up for him. So yeah, definitely a good value pick there. Fourth round, Kobe Parkinson, tight end from Stanford. It's a decent pick in the fourth round. Seems like this is where all the tight ends were kind of grouped together. DJ Dallas, running back in the fourth, who a lot of people say could be a pretty big sleeper. They didn't really need a running back. They have a ton of them already in Seattle, so maybe he'll get some play time. Probably not, though. Fifth round, Alton Robinson, Syracuse defensive end. Okay pick there in the fifth. Sixth round, Freddie Swain, Florida wide receiver. Probably like the third best receiver in Florida, so not a great pick there. Stephen Sullivan, LSU tight end in the seventh. SEC player tight end, can't go wrong, but a little weird considering they already took a tight end. So overall, Seattle, again, just another very average draft, so they get probably like a C as well. I think they took Brooks a little higher than a lot of other people were thinking about taking him, so that Seattle also gets a C. San Fran next, who also got Trent Williams from Washington, so they traded some picks for him, so that was a pretty good move on their part. They filled some of their needs by getting Trent Williams. They didn't really get any defensive help that much, though. They got a defensive tackle, Javon Kinlaw. Fell to them at 14th, 9th overall. Pretty good value pick. I think that was just kind of a best on their board scenario. They traded up for Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver at Arizona State, which I really like this pick. Would have liked to see him in a New England uniform, either him or Shenault, but they didn't get either one of them. So I think he will start right away for them with the other kid they got, Deebo Samuel. Fifth round, again, they traded most of these picks away. Fifth round, Colton McVitz, West Virginia offensive tackle. Decent pick in the fifth. Charlie Warner, Georgia tight end. Don't know anything about him, but SEC player again. Juwan Jennings, wide receiver from Tennessee in the seventh, is not a horrible pick. I think he has some potential, but they didn't really need to take another receiver. Considering, well, it was a big need for them. I don't know why they don't have a receiver down as a need. So this draft overall, again, didn't have many picks, but they got Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, Kinlaw. I think it gets probably a B- for San Fran. I would like the draft there. They're doing good things. Tampa Bay had a really good draft, too, in my opinion. First round, they trade up for Twiston Wirfs just to support Tom Brady on the offensive line. He was kind of falling a bit, so they went up and got him. Second round, Antoine Winfield Jr. from Minnesota. Also a really outstanding pick for the beginning of the second round at safety. Really, really fantastic pick. Third round, Keyshawn Vaughn, running back. Again, really good pick for something they needed offensively. Tyler Johnson, Minnesota wide receiver, more offensive help. They don't really need a receiver, so it was a little bit of a weird pick. Sixth round, Khalil Davis, defensive tackle from Nebraska. Chappelle Russell, outside linebacker from Temple. And Raymond Calais, Louisiana, running back. Again, could see some play time, maybe a sneaky player. The only thing I would have done differently for their draft is maybe in these spots here you go defense instead of Keyshawn Vaughn and Tyler Johnson. But overall, Tampa Bay had a good draft, so they get probably an A- from me. Definitely like an A- B+ type of draft. So Tennessee, Isaiah, and I didn't come up with any formal grading system or anything for this. I'm kind of just going off whim here and saying grades as I go. Tennessee didn't have too many picks. First round, Isaiah Wilson, offensive tackle from Georgia. Probably a little bit of a reach, but tons of tackles were going, so it's not a horrible pick. He was ranked 31 overall. Second round, Kristen Fulton, Louisiana cornerback. Good pick for the end of the second, I think. Pretty solid pick. Third round, Darrington Evans, Appalachian State running back. He's an okay player. Appalachian State can produce some players. They're a pretty good college team. Fifth round, Lavrell Murchison, NC State defensive tackle. Probably not the best pick there. Seventh round, Cole McDonald, quarterback from Hawaii. Probably just a backup player in the NFL. Probably never see significant play time ever. Chris Jackson, Marshall, safety. Last couple picks are a little skeptical. First couple picks, pretty good. So, again, they get probably like a C+ draft out of me for Tennessee. Or at most probably like a B-. Washington, the last team up here, but of course not least. Second pick, Chase Young. They could have maybe traded or messed this pick up. That would seem to be typical Redskins fashion, but they didn't. They took the best player in the draft, so props to them for getting him at second overall. Antonio Gibson in the third round. They didn't have a second round pick. Memphis, a wide receiver. And they needed help on the offensive line and defense, and they kind of got some of those needs. They took a couple offensive weapons, but not the type we were looking for. Sadiq Charles in the fourth is a pretty good pick in the fourth for an offensive tackle. Like, he fell a lot, I think. Antonio Gandy Golden in the 4th as well, receiver out of Liberty. A little bit of a reach, but sneaky player from Liberty. We'll have to see. They definitely needed receivers, and they got 2 pretty decent to average ones. 5th round, Keith Ishmael, San Diego State center. Some offensive line help for the quarterback. 5th round, Khalik Hudson, Michigan offensive line. The quarterback is Dwayne Haskins, by the way. I don't know why I forgot his name for a second. It's tough to think of all this stuff on the spot. 5th round, Khalik Hudson, Michigan outside linebacker. Kareem Curl in the 7th, safety, and James Smith-Williams, defensive end. They also traded Trent Williams for some picks from San Fran, right? Yeah. So, overall, they filled some needs. They didn't fill all their needs, but they got some good players. Hard to argue with Chase Young being there, even though it's not a need per se. They're trying to build a nice defensive team there, and I think they're doing an okay job. So, overall, hard to mess up when you get Chase Young, so they get an A- because some of their other picks were a little skeptical, but Chase Young, a really good pick. So overall, the winners of the draft, in my opinion, I'm just going to go through and pick my top 5 winners here, which I could probably do in a separate video. But I think Arizona, really strong draft. Baltimore, Buffalo, really strong drafts there. Cincinnati, of course, very strong draft. Cleveland also had a strong draft, as well as Dallas, Denver, and those were some of the strongest ones. Miami had an okay draft, depending how Tua comes out pretty strong. And Minnesota had a decently strong draft. Jets were pretty strong drafts, and Bucks also a strong draft. So I think like my top 5 would be like Denver, Dallas, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Baltimore. Maybe the second tier being like Arizona, Minnesota, Giants, Jets, and Buccaneers, Redskins, somewhere in that range. Some of the worst teams I think in the draft were the Atlanta Falcons. Chicago Bears didn't have a really tremendously great draft. Green Bay Packers draft was horrible. Houston, not the best draft. Some of these other teams, Jacksonville, Indy, were all average to above average. Chargers, Chiefs probably didn't have a fantastic draft. They didn't really need to have one. The Raiders messed up a couple picks, I think. Sure, they could have had Jerry Jeudy, but they went out and got good players besides that. Like, there wasn't many teams that had horrible drafts. Probably the worst ones were probably Seattle didn't have a really good draft. So my top 5 worst are going to be Seattle, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Houston, and Green Bay. Those are my top 5. The Saints didn't have many picks, but they did okay with what they had. So overall, thank you all for watching this longer video on the NFL draft. It's just my thoughts on the players taken. I know I watched the first couple rounds pretty attentively, and hopefully I can watch more college ball in the future and do another one of these next year, and we'll see and keep an eye on things more. I didn't really know as many players this year as I would have in the past for as far as, watching just more games. Just been a lot busier. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. Peace out.